picture the scene. It's a blistering, like 110-degree summer day in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, wow. Yeah, classic Phoenix.
Right. And it's the year 2000. You're standing at the airport gate, and you've got these, actual paper tickets in your hand.
Which is wild to even think about now.
It really is. You don't have a smartphone giving you, like, push notifications about delays, no app to quickly rebook your flight. You are just entirely at the mercy of the airline counter.
You're just kind of flying blind, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And that specific friction, that analog reality of traveling the world right at the dawn of the new millennium, that is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive.
Yeah, because it requires this completely different mindset than how we navigate the globe today.
It really does. And to do this, our sources today aren't academic papers or anything. We've got this amazing stack of physical remnants. We're talking personal travel journals, faded receipts, currency exchange slips, even a local church bulletin.
I love that we have these tangible things to look at.
Right. And these artifacts belong to an American couple, Jim and Marie. So we are diving into these materials today to celebrate her very happy 87th birthday.
Happy birthday, Marie. And honestly, it is quite a celebration to look back on because these journals, they chronicle two massive international trips they took in the year 2000.
Massive. First, this deep exploration of London and the English countryside, and then just a few months later, this extensive journey all across China.
Yeah, and the goal here is to sort of walk alongside them through these incredible historical sites, but even more importantly, to extract the texture of what it actually felt like to be a global traveler during that very specific window in time.
Yeah, that texture is so vivid in these pages. And the one overarching theme that just jumps out is their profound sense of adaptability. Jim and Marie just had this boundless, awe-inspiring stamina.
Absolutely. They practiced this travel philosophy that is, frankly, pretty rare. They didn't really look at a travel itinerary as some binding contract. It was more like...
A loose suggestion.
Exactly, a very loose suggestion.
Which brings us right back to that 110-degree day at the Phoenix airport. So they're at the gate, ready to start this long sequence of flights to get to London. And the gate agent gets on the mic and offers $600 vouchers to anyone willing to give up their seats and reroute through Paris.
And they just jump on it, right?
Without even hesitating. They just say, yes, take the deal, board the new flight, and immediately celebrate with wine and tomato juice.
I love that. And, you got to consider the economics of that moment. In 2000, before airlines totally perfected, like algorithmic overbooking and dynamic pricing, $600 each was a massive payout.
Oh, for sure.
But what's really compelling is just the reaction to it. They aren't stressed about their schedule getting messed up. The detour just becomes the adventure.
Right. It's just part of the fun for them.
Yeah, and because they said yes, they end up waking up to this beautiful sunrise over France, eating chicken and drinking French wine at 35,000 feet.
And then their arrival in Paris gives us this, our first real Y2K time capsule moment. So they land, the plane is taxiing, and they look out the window and spot a Concorde just sitting right there on the tarmac.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the Concorde, that was the absolute pinnacle of aviation ambition at the time. Supersonic passenger travel.
It was the future, or what we thought was the future.
Exactly. To see it resting on the runway was to look at the future of global transit. And, it's a bit of a poignant detail in the journal, especially since a tragic accident involving a Concorde happened in Paris just days later, which, kind of marked the beginning of the end for that aircraft.
Yeah, it's a sobering reminder of how fragile travel can be.
It is. But in that specific snapshot, just looking out the window, it was pure, unadulterated technological optimism.
Right. So they eventually make their way across the channel to Gatwick Airport in England. They're heading to Guildford to visit Judy and her husband, Rob. And, within hours of landing, jet-lagged, probably not even unpacked, they find themselves smack in the middle of a local garden party.
Of course they do.
The journal describes folk dancing, plates of cucumber sandwiches. They are just instantly embedded in rural English life.
And that immersion, it just continues the very next morning. They go to St. Saviour's Church in Guildford. And the actual physical church bulletin they saved from that Sunday, it was July 23rd. It's such a fascinating document.
It really is a time capsule.
Yeah, it highlights this technological transition of the era. It notes that the lyrics to the worship songs, like Great is the Lord, are going to be projected onto a screen rather than just read from hymnals.
A big deal back then.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But the prayer request section is where you really see the world shrinking.
Yeah, I noticed that. The congregation in this quiet English town is collectively praying for the G8 summit that was happening that exact day in Japan, specifically focusing on international debt relief.
Right. And right below that.
Yeah, they're praying for the victims of a massive landslide that had just occurred in the Philippines.
It's just so interesting because before the era where global news was, constantly refreshing in our pockets on our phones, local community hubs like a church where people collectively process international events.
Yeah, Jim and Marie stepped off a plane and immediately plugged right into the local to global consciousness of this town.
And this whole improvisational approach of theirs, I kind of like to call it the yes and philosophy of travel. It really shapes how they absorb the UK over the next few weeks.
It's improv comedy.
Exactly. They don't approach historical sites with this rigid checklist. They just let the environment dictate the experience, like when they get to London.
Oh, right. So they take the train into Waterloo Station and walk straight up to the Millennium Wheel, which we all know now as the London Eye.
But the journal points out it's completely sold out.
Totally booked.
Yeah, because it had literally just opened to the public that year. It was the centerpiece of London's Millennium celebrations. It was the hottest ticket in Europe.
But they don't get mad or frustrated. They just immediately pivot to the River Thames. They jump on a boat ride, end up floating past this full-scale reconstruction of the Golden Hind, Sir Francis Drake's galleon.
Right, the 16th century one.
Yeah, and from there, they dive right into the Tower of London. And what's funny is the journal specifically points out how much they enjoyed the audio headphones at the Medieval Museum and the Crown Jewels.
Well, audio tours were becoming a lot more sophisticated around then, transitioning from those awful, clunky cassette tapes to early digital wands.
Oh, yeah, those plastic wands.
Exactly. And it allowed travelers to kind of detach from those massive crowded tour groups and just absorb the heavy, dark history of a place like the Tower of London at their own pace.
Okay, hold on, though. I really need to bring up their visit to St. Paul's Cathedral, because this journal entry totally fascinated me.
Oh, the skateboarders.
Yes. So they take a bus to St. Paul's, they sit in on a service, they write about the beautiful music. But when Marie actually writes about this majestic building, Christopher Wren's masterpiece, she focuses heavily on two things.
Let me guess.
First, the exterior is completely covered in soot. And second, there are teenagers just skateboarding all over the steps outside. And meanwhile, she and Jim are sitting across the street at a pub, eating tomato soup and drinking a lager, just watching these kids. I mean, is there a risk they're just completely missing the gravity of the site by focusing on dirty masonry and teenagers?
I would actually argue they are seeing the site way more authentically than a typical tourist.
Really? How so?
Well, the soot they noticed, that was a real physical characteristic of London before all those massive multi-million-pound cleaning projects in the 2000s finally scrubbed centuries of industrial pollution off that stone.
Oh, that makes sense. It was just the reality of the building then.
Exactly. And the skateboarders. That is just the reality of a modern European capital. I mean, a 300-year-old cathedral isn't just a museum exhibit sealed behind glass. It's a living, breathing part of the urban landscape.
It's a backdrop.
Right. It functions as a backdrop for the youth of the year 2000. By sitting in that pub and watching this collision of 17th century architecture and 21st century teenagers, they're witnessing the actual pulse of London.
I love that. They're observing the layers of the city, and they experience this similar sort of living history later that evening. They're walking near the Houses of Parliament, and they literally just follow some locals through a back entrance.
Just wander right in.
Yeah. They clear security, and suddenly they're sitting on the green benches inside the House of Commons, watching a live parliamentary session at 7 p.m.
I mean, access to government buildings was remarkably different before all the security overhauls that happened globally in the years after that. To just wander into the legislative heart of the UK on a whim is such a phenomenal travel memory. Seriously. So, leaving the city, they head into the English countryside, and the scale of history just kind of continues to expand. They stay at this bed and breakfast called Thane Manor, and it sits on this massive estate with 400 cattle.
400?
Right. And the owners mentioned they lease the land for £80,000 a year. I mean, to an American traveler, encountering an agricultural lease on an aristocratic scale like that, it feels like stepping into a totally different century.
It really highlights the difference in land ownership history, between the American West and rural England, where estates have been managed by the exact same entities for hundreds of years.
So true. Then they visit Stonehenge, these towering monoliths. And they climb the steep cliffs at Cheddar Gorge, which is literally the geographic birthplace of cheddar cheese.
Naturally.
And then they arrive in Bath. They tour the Roman baths, looking at engineering that is thousands of years old. And afterward, they sit down for a meal. Jim orders bacon, lentil soup, and buns. And they just casually note in the journal that the restaurant they are dining in is 1,000 years old. The compression of time in a place like Bath is just staggering. You have a geothermal hot spring developed by the Romans in the 1st century, right? Surrounded by Georgian architecture from the 18th century. And they are eating lentil soup in a building constructed around the time of the Norman conquest.
It's mind-blowing. And their eye for detail really shines when they visit Wells Cathedral. It's this pristine, massive Gothic structure that just completely dominates this tiny town. But what captivates them isn't the vaulted ceilings. It's the cathedral's clock.
The second oldest in England, right?
Yes. And they are absolutely charmed by the mechanics of it. Just watching these little carved horses rotate in circles on the dial, they appreciate the grand architecture, but they completely fall in love with the whimsical mechanical details.
And, that pretty much wraps up their summer in the UK. But a few months later, their travel environment shifts dramatically.
Oh, completely.
They move from an island nation that is deeply invested in preserving its ancient stones to a country that was, in November of 2000, rapidly paving over its past to build this hyper-globalized future.
We are talking about China,
Hmm.
and their departure alone just feels cinematic. They are at LAX looking out the window, and they spot Air Force One on the tarmac.
Oh, what a sight.
Then they settle in for a 10-hour flight, waking up at 5 a.m. at 35,000 feet to eat noodles and chicken as the sun comes up over Japan.
Entering Beijing in 2000 was to witness a city in the middle of this unprecedented economic metamorphosis. And the physical receipts Jim and Marie kept from this leg of the trip, they tell such a fascinating story about how the hospitality industry was trying to navigate this new openness.
They really do. So they check into the Jingguang New World Hotel in Beijing, and the receipts show they ate at the hotel's, quote, Renaissance Cafe. And this cafe was running a special promotion that literally read, Our Cafe Goes Italian.
Oh, that is so funny.
Right, so you have an American couple in the heart of the Chinese capital sitting down to a meal of seafood linguine alongside Hainan chicken rice, and they're washing it all down with local Tsingtao beer and imported French avian water.
It just perfectly illustrates globalization in its awkward teenage phase.
Awkward teenage phase, exactly.
You've got this major hotel built with international capital, desperately trying to anticipate what Western tourists and business people want to eat. And it results in this slightly confused, highly earnest Italian promotion right in the middle of Beijing. It's a culinary collision that really only makes sense in the context of a rapidly opening economy trying to cater to the world.
Definitely. We also have the physical currency exchange receipts from the airport showing the exact math of converting U.S. dollars to yuan. And they visit this colossal 1,000-square-meter cloisonne factory, and they actually kept the tactile VIP shopping cart from the factory floor, which promised a free gift if you spend over 800 RMB.
Wow, an early loyalty program.
Right. It paints a picture of an infrastructure that was built specifically to handle these huge waves of foreign visitors.
Yeah, and they're moving with a tour group of about 40 people, kind of navigating these massive state-sponsored cultural centers.
But Jim and Ree are doing it in their own unique style. The journal notes they are highly recognizable to everyone in the group because they are traversing China wearing these wide-brimmed Aussie cowboy hats.
Which is amazing. And it happens to be the year of the dragon, too.
Yes.
They clearly had no interest in blending in. They brought their own personality to every single site they visited.
And the physical demands of these sites are immense. They walk the vast, sprawling concrete expanse of Tiananmen Square. They explore the intricate architecture of the Forbidden City, wandering through a complex that boasts 999 rooms.
That's just a staggering scale.
It is. They descend 190 steep subterranean stairs into the Ming tombs. They brave the biting November wind to walk the uneven, ancient stones of the Great Wall. And they even visit a jade factory where they learn that the magnolia flower is a symbol of long life.
The scale of Chinese historical sites is basically designed to make the individual feel small, to project the sheer power of centuries of dynastic rule. Covering that much ground requires serious fortitude, especially that physical descent into the Ming tombs or, navigating those really steep inclines on the Great Wall.
Yet, with all of those monumental wonders on their itinerary, the journal explicitly notes that the absolute best part of the entire trip was something much smaller.
Oh, I love this part.
It was a rickshaw tour through the narrow alleyways of Old Town Beijing. They climbed the steep wooden stairs of an ancient drum tower. And then they visited a local classroom. And the highlight of the trip wasn't the Great Wall. It was Jim, in his Aussie cowboy hat, spontaneously dancing with the local school children while Marie snapped photos.
Which really tells you everything you need to know about their priorities, right? I mean, the Forbidden City is magnificent, but it's essentially a monument to isolation. The hotel's Italian cafe is this earnest attempt at global commerce, but the simple act of dancing with kids in a classroom that cuts through all the geopolitical changes of the era.
It transcends all of it.
It's just this moment of pure, unmediated human connection.
Exactly. So the journey then takes them west to Xi'an, where they experience what has to be the ultimate technological time capsule moment of this entire deep dive.
Oh, the contrast in this sequence of events is just incredible.
It really is. The day is November 7th, 2000. In the U.S., it is Election Day.
The infamous Bush versus Gore race.
Yes, exactly. So Jim and Marie take a Boeing 777 to Xi'an. They are standing on the taxiway waiting to board a transport bus. Once they get on the bus, someone in the tour group asks if there's any news about the election back home. And their local guide, Alan, reaches into his pocket and pulls out an early wireless personal digital assistant, a PDA.
Okay, to understand the mechanics of this, in the year 2000, cellular networks were primarily for voice calls, but mobile data was in its absolute infancy. We're talking slow, text-only WAP browsers.
Yes, extremely basic. But Alan punches a few keys on this device, pulls down data from a satellite or some very early cell tower while sitting in the dusty expanse near the Gobi Desert, and announces to the entire bus that the U.S. presidential election is currently deadlocked in a tie, 44% to 44%.
I mean, getting a live, down-to-the-wire geopolitical update on a handheld wireless device in a remote part of China in 2000, that would have felt like witnessing magic. It was the absolute bleeding edge of the information age.
Pure science fiction.
Yeah.
And immediately after receiving this transmission from the future, they step off the bus and walk into an excavation pit to view the Terracotta Warriors.
Wow.
An eighth wonder of the world, an army of clay soldiers buried underground for over 2 millennia. The juxtaposition is just dizzying. You have the dawn of instantaneous global data intersecting right there with an emperor's 2,000-year-old attempt at immortality.
It perfectly captures the sensation of international travel during that specific year. You are constantly stepping back and forth across the boundary of ancient history and rapid technological advancement.
And through all of this time travel, their stamina never wavers. After the Terracotta Warriors, they eat local dumplings, they attend a performance of the Xi'an Opera, and then they return to the Sheraton Hotel and dance in the lobby lounge until 12:45 in the morning.
They are essentially running a marathon of cultural absorption.
Truly. Their final leg of the journey is really a masterclass in varied experiences. They fly to Shanghai, landing at the Pudong International Airport.
Which is an important historical marker itself. In November 2000, Pudong Airport was only about a month old. It was this massive, gleaming facility built to signal Shanghai's reemergence as a global financial hub. They were literally walking through the freshly poured foundations of the 21st century.
And from that ultra-modern airport, they travel to Suzhou, a city famous for its intricate waterways. People often call it the Venice of China. They ride these small boats down the Grand Canal, drifting past historic architecture, and they take in the vibrant, chaotic energy of the Festival of Dragons, listening to the distinct, resonant voices of Tibetan singers.
Such a contrast.
It is a sensory overload, contrasting the sleek glass of Shanghai with the ancient rhythms of the water towns.
They really managed to witness the full spectrum of a country in transition.
Looking at this entire collection of sources, the journals, the receipts, the boarding passes, the church bulletins, it makes you reconsider what makes travel meaningful. Jim and Marie didn't just move through these countries, they actively participated in them. They said yes to a detour to Paris. They enjoyed the contrast of skateboarders at St. Paul's. They danced in a classroom in Beijing.
Yeah, their approach strips away the anxiety of trying to control an itinerary. By just accepting that travel is inherently unpredictable, they open themselves up to the actual pulse of the places they visited.
It makes you wonder about how we navigate the world today. We are so conditioned to let our phones optimize our routes, guiding us efficiently from one famous landmark to the next. If we rigidly follow the blue dot on the screen, are we missing the texture of the city? Are we forgetting to look for the skateboarders outside the cathedrals?
That is definitely the enduring lesson of Jim and Marie's journals. But, there is also a secondary takeaway here regarding the medium itself. We just spent this time reconstructing two incredible journeys based on physical slips of paper. An 80,000-pound lease mentioned in a handwritten journal, an Italian menu from a Beijing hotel, a tied election recorded by hand.
Physical proof that they were there.
Exactly. And in our current era, where every photograph is digital, where every ticket is a QR code on a screen, and everything is just automatically swept into a cloud server, the tactile evidence of our lives is kind of disappearing. It raises a fascinating question. What physical artifacts, what tangible fingerprints of your adventures will you leave behind for someone to marvel at 2 decades from now?
Because ultimately, history isn't just a clean narrative found in a textbook. It's a gloriously messy collection of flight vouchers, cowboy hats, and a complimentary Panda beer from a hotel lobby. Happy 87th birthday, Marie, and thank you for saving the receipts.